Self-concept and self-esteem, two of the core foundations of human relations. Now, it's very interesting that the premise we are setting here is that how someone sees themselves, how someone views themselves, how someone feels about themselves is going to impact the way they interact with others. That is very important to note. Now, somebody doesn't have to tell you how they feel about themselves, but typically speaking, we can have an idea of how they feel about themselves or how they think about themselves by the way they conduct their conversations and the way they relate with other people. Now, note that how someone feels on a particular day is not self-concept. Today I just might feel lazy. Today I might feel great. That's not self-concept. Remember, self-concept is really a general view of how you perceive yourself normally. In the opening class text, we would have found a story between Moses and God. Let's recap that story. Moses was out in the wilderness, and one day he saw a bush and flames were coming out of this bush. So Moses was curious and he went closer to the bush, and he noticed that he was seeing flames but the bush wasn't burning up. And he was wondering, well, how is this bush burning? Or not burning, rather, and I'm seeing flames. So as he moved closer, he heard a voice. God told him, don't come any closer, you are standing on holy ground. Take off your shoes. All right, so Moses took off his shoes. Then Moses and God went into a conversation. God said to Moses, Moses, listen, I have some people in Egypt and I need them to come out of Egypt. And I need you to get to take them out. Moses in verse 11 says, me? Lord, why are you sending me? I don't think I'm capable of doing that. As a matter of fact, do you know what will happen when I go there? So God tell Moses, Moses, don't worry. I know you might be a little afraid, but I am going to be with you. Moses said, but I am supposed to go down and tell the people what in Egypt? God told Moses, go and tell the people that I am sent you. Moses like, listen, Lord, I am. Suppose they don't listen to what I have to say. And God told Moses, don't worry. They will listen to you. As a matter of fact, here are some signs that you can do. And if you notice in your text for this week, I actually skipped out some verses, and that's intentional because we just particularly want to make a particular point as it relates to what we're going over. So if we skip down to Exodus 4, verses 8 to 9, and God told Moses, don't worry, if they don't trust the first sign you do, Moses, they will trust the second sign. Moses like, Lord, I still have some issues with this request. Moses said, Lord, I don't speak well. I stutter and I stammer, and I don't think they will take me seriously. God is like, Moses, don't you think I know that? I made your mouth. Okay, so I am quite aware of the fact that you stutter and stammer, but when you get there, you'll be fine. Moses like, no, Lord, no, Lord, no, Lord. Please, don't send me. I am not a good pick for this. I don't think I'm capable of doing this. I don't think I'll do a good job at this. And then the Bible says God got angry with Moses. He said, fine, never mind, Moses. Okay, your brother Aaron, very well. Your brother Aaron, he is good with words? Fine. He will do the speaking, Aaron will do the speaking, and you will do the signs. Fine? Is that okay with you, Moses? And so the story ends as, of course, based on our focus for this week. It is very interesting to note something very important in this story, and I'm sure this will make the quiz. Here's one of the very important points that comes out in this story. A person's view of themselves does not change easily. Moses was talking to God. God, who is supposed to be in charge of everything, is telling Moses, don't worry, I am sending you. I will make all things work out. It will work out fine. And Moses was like, no, Lord, I don't think so. I am not good enough. I'm not capable. And even after an ongoing conversation with God, Moses still didn't change his mind. And he was talking to God. Point of the story for the focus of our class this week. how a person views themselves does not change easily. Even after a conversation with God, Moses still didn't think of himself as capable of doing the task that God was asking him to do. Very interesting point. And that is interesting for us to note. Our view of ourselves doesn't just change overnight. And our views of others typically sometimes doesn't change overnight either. And how we see people view themselves is not easy to change it. And just for a plug here, you might find it interesting to note that human beings as well, sometimes if they are very spiritual, they will probably go and pray, Lord, Lord, change me, or Lord, make me like you. Well, those things don't come easily. And if you know a little bit more about spirituality, and you may have heard the word sanctification before, and you may have heard some people say sanctification is a work of a lifetime. Well, why you think so? Not because God is slow, but because human beings are very difficult to change, especially when we have perceptions of ourselves and perceptions of our capabilities and perceptions of how we view life and its other entities. Those do not change very easily. Very interesting story that highlights and introduces our first segment for this week. Your book will have indicated this, and we just want to make a point of this again. In human relations, we have two major emphases. We have personal development and growth, and satisfying objectives of the organization. First major part of this course is going to deal with personal development, personal growth. What's happening inside of an individual that influences or affects the way that individual communicates or that individual actually relates to other beings. And it's very important to note again, that's such a foundation piece, that how people think, how they view themselves, how persons conceive of their own abilities affects the way they communicate with other people. Now, this is so important, and we are making the stress here that someone has to develop these abilities. They have to investigate themselves. They have to actually work on developing skill sets in themselves to become better at relations. It's not automatic for most people. And it's very interesting also to note that I teach human resource management, and many times students will bring their resumes for me to critique and take a look at to be able to boost them up. And I do quite a lot of that extensively. And people who can sometimes put on their resumes, they're excellent at human relation skills and they're excellent at interpersonal skills. The truth of the matter is many people are not that excellent as they view it. They may perceive themselves to be excellent. But the truth is that a lot of times, if you really put some of these persons to the test, they are not as excellent as they think. Because a lot of the times, we find that when we get into human relations and how people actually relate and being successful in relating, many of these people are only good in circumstances that they like, or very good in circumstances that are favorable. But to be very good at interpersonal relationships means you have to deal with very difficult situations, complex issues as well. You have to be able to control your emotions. We'll talk about that later on in the course. You have to have a very important ability to listen, and listen very well. Many people do not listen very well. You have to investigate your own self to see how your own view of yourself and your view of others impacts. And those things come from childhood, how we were grown up, circumstances we were exposed to. Those things have to be explored, and many people don't explore these things very well. Yet they believe, oh yeah, I'm a great person at interpersonal relationships, or I'm very great at communicating. Truth of the matter is most people believe that they are very good at expressing ideas, so they are very good at talking. But very good at talking or just knowing words to say is not necessarily good at human relations. It's much deeper than that. So we really want to explore that this course to find out a little bit about human relations and trying to improve your skills, but also to assess yourself to see where you are. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You'll be surprised that many people who are very advanced or mature in life still struggle very much with certain aspects of human relations. And we want to explore that in this course. I'm going to put a plug in here for that case study. I put it specifically in here to remind you that you have a case study due at the end of this week. So I'm hoping that you will have your textbook and get it ready and follow the instructions that are posted there for you. How does a person's concept of themselves inform how they relate to others? Now, this is a straightforward question, but when you go to your chapter, you will have to kind of peruse the chapter and pull out things that make sense. Because this is not, you're not going to find a particular section of the chapter that asks this question and gives you the straightforward answers. Oh, no, no, no. I need you to go through the chapter and make sense of what you're seeing and then be able to fill in these slides here. And just to make sure that you have taken some time to go through the chapter to make sure that you have actually got this information, I'm sure you're going to see a question on the quiz. Be careful, the quiz is timed, so you don't have time to be going back and forth to be able to find information too fast. You got to make sure you're assimilating the information as you go along. So as we even go along this lecture, you may even get some information as well. So pay attention as you have 5 points that you need to fill in according for this slide. The way you see yourself, the way one sees themselves, the foundation of all the thoughts about oneself forms a person's self-concept, and your book makes this very clear, and you can actually get some additional information in your text as well. And it's often important to assess how you see yourself. Every so often in life, it's good to do a little self-assessment. And they say women tend to be better at these things, so they say, we are in our thoughts and in our emotions and our feelings. But as we go through life, some things change. We adjust, we learn, we grow. Things happen, we explore, we try different things, we update. So it's important to be able to explore your feelings ever so often and how you see yourself. And we're going to do some assessments in this course as to see how you see certain aspects of yourself. Your book actually has the information for this. This is very clear-cut, and this diagram is very similar to a diagram that is in your text. And it says 4 parts of self-concept. And so you can fill in the 4 parts here, and I'm sure you'll find the information very straightforward in your textbook so that you can put in the information. On this particular slide, let's look at 2 of the major ones here. The first one and the last one. The rest you can read, and some of these you're going to see in your text as well. So the first one is the ideal self, what you wish to become. All of us have an ideal self. One day I would like to be. I am becoming. I am working towards what I want to become. And that's the ideal self. It keeps us going. It gives us something to work towards and look forward to. It makes us put our energies behind something. And we work towards that. And so your ideal self is a part of yourself. Of course, we're not saying that people have split personalities, but we're just saying that there are aspects how we view things, and this view of ourselves, we call it the ideal self. And then, of course, we have the looking glass self, how people assume that others look at them. The self-image, the view of yourself, how you view yourself. And your real self is who you really, really are. Some people go at lengths to hide their real selves. Sometimes they are unsure of how people will perceive them, so they hide aspects of themselves, their real selves. All right, but here we are looking at 4 aspects of who we are, generally speaking, in terms of self-concept. Now, how people assume other people look at them, the second one, that's a very big part of our image and how we look at ourselves as well. And we will find that sometimes we view people. If we view that people think about us positively, we act a particular way. If we think people view us negatively, we act a particular way. And human beings may do that. Some people think, hey, everybody thinks I'm cool, so they may act a particular way. Some people think that people are always willing to listen to me, so they love to use a lot of words. Some people think people don't really want to listen to me, so they don't say much. Or some people think I'm not as smart as other people, so I'm not going to say much. So again, concepts of how we think people view us play a very important role as to how persons communicate and how they relate to other persons. Psychologist Carl Rogers is highlighted in your text, and you can fill in the information right here. It says, one ideal self comes from the something you receive from your parents and people around you about what you should be like. So where do we get ideas of what we should be like? We have been taught, we have read, we have seen, we have heard, we talk about it all the time. Persons tell us from when we were growing up, what are you supposed to be like? Should you speak this way? Should you act this way? Should you be able to have certain habits this way? And so we have been taught along the way how to do it. Now, Carl Rogers talks about the gap between your real self and the ideal self. Now, if we had gone back to this slide before, we'll talk about your real self as who you really are right now. And so he says here that persons who have a large gap between their real self and their ideal self find that they become very depressed and unhappy, right? Because they want to be a particular way, but they find themselves so far away from it. However, thankfully, he says at the very bottom of this slide that to merge or come closer to between your real and your ideal. That means you continue working towards your ideal. Try to make sure your ideal is realistic so that you feel good working towards it. Make sure it's attainable and make your ideal self more real. Don't try to be anything too much more than you really can be, so that eventually you find yourself feeling so depressed and not being able to go through. Self-concept facts. It changes over time. Just like we said in the story with Moses and God, we cannot change your self-concept by a conversation. And sometimes people feel so. I'm just going to have a long talk with somebody and then they'll just change. Or we expect somebody to just change overnight. It doesn't happen like that. We don't change people's self-concept by a conversation. You may get them more self-aware. You may get them to make a decision about changing. But they just don't change overnight. It's not magic. Poof, and it happens. And that's important to know, because you may see someone displaying certain types of behaviors and you want to go and talk to them. You may get them to change their behavior, but we're not talking about changing somebody's behavior. You are thinking about changing someone's concept over time. And so a lot of times, again, it takes a while. Moses was talking to God. Even God couldn't change Moses' self-concept just like that. And so it goes to show again that how somebody perceives themselves takes time. Now, it affects also our ability to learn. If I believe I'm capable of learning, then I tend to be open to learning. If I don't think I'm capable, then I don't want to learn. And sometimes people may be like that. They may find themselves very good at certain areas of their lives. Maybe I'm good at football and I like to play football. I'm good at games. But then I find myself, when it comes to work, I find like I'm not too sure. Maybe I take a longer time to get it. And because I feel as though I can't get it well enough or fast enough, it may affect my interest and my ability to learn. All right, affected by success and failure. That's true. If we fail at something and we were embarrassed about it, a lot of times we say we don't want to try it again. Most people would try again or try very little. That is because we don't like failure, and especially if we are made to feel bad for it, a lot of times our concept of doing something may change for ourselves. And it affects management behavior. That is very true. A lot of times people will find that they work for bosses. Some of you may work and you'll find some of your bosses may be a certain type of way. Some of them are really nice and quite capable. Others of them struggle with certain aspects of themselves. And before they can say that they do, they much rather take it out on the employees. So you find a lot of times that they themselves probably treat their employees a particular type of way because they themselves struggle with certain aspects of their own concept over a period of time. And many times we will find that sometimes people cannot tell you that they struggle with self-concept. They cannot tell you that they may struggle with self-esteem. So what they do, they cover it up and they hide it and they take it out on other people, treating other people harsh, unfairly. And a lot of times it's because they struggle with their own concept of themselves and how they view themselves and how they view others, which we'll talk about in a very short while. Are people who honestly don't care about what others think about them hard to get used to? Have you ever met someone like that? They really don't care what other people think. I don't care if they think two hoots about me. I'm going to do what I want. Are they hard to get along with or easy to accept in your space? Do you find them easy to interact with? So that's an interesting question to think about as you think about people in your lives, in your workspace, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your communities, in the groups that you interact with. So there are some people who just don't care about what other people think. Now, the don't care could be such that they infuse on the rights of others. So they might be don't care even if it offends you. Who cares? And then there are others as well who honestly, actually, they are quite healthy in their self-concept of themselves. So they're willing to think about you positively and themselves positively. And we want to talk about that a little bit more just now. Now, on your exercise number 1, you have to fill in some information from me. And I'm going to talk about that information now regarding John Bowlby's study of how people approach relationships and their relations with others. So you will have had a grid in front of you, and that grid shows the top views of self, and on the side of that grid talks about views of others. Views of self and views of others. In box number 1, next to number 1, write the word secure. This is a person who has a positive view of themselves and positive views of others. That's a secure person. How does that person treat and relate to others? According to John Bowlby, that person tends to be more outgoing to other people. They tend to be affectionate. That person tends to be able to handle challenges and disappointments without losing a sense of self. Again, this is a categorization of an individual who has a positive view of themselves and a positive view of others. This person tends to be very good in interrelations with other persons. That's box or grid number 1. Number 2, a negative view of a self and a positive view of others. How is that possible? Sometimes you really don't see yourself as capable. Sometimes you really don't see yourself as capable and also as competent. And so you have a negative view of yourself. I'm not good enough. I'm not capable enough. But you think other people are great, but I am not. And so number 2, the word for that line is anxious / ambivalent. This person is drawn to relationships. They like to be around others because being around themselves make them feel bad. They don't think highly of themselves. So they are drawn to relationships. However, they are very uneasy with closeness, depths of relationship. Because after getting into a relationship over a period of time, the person maybe need to share more of themselves. And because they are not comfortable with themselves, they tend to hide themselves. This individual will actually shrink away from closeness. This person also tends to be sort of moody. They invite some affection some days, and other days they reject affection. And so we find that is when somebody is struggling with things inside themselves, unresolved issues, things that they're not clear about, things that they feel very uncomfortable about. So some days they tend to be okay, some days they tend to be not okay. And this person is called anxious, an anxious individual. They are anxious by lifestyle. Alright, and an anxious individual is shown they're very indecisive, they can't make up their minds, they're not quite sure. And that's how they are generally speaking. We're not talking about sometimes you may face a situation and sometimes you may find that the individual sometimes can be indecisive or anxious. No, we're talking about generally this is how an individual is. Number 3, the word is dismissive. This person has a positive view of themselves but a negative view of other people. So they tend to be dismissive or scornful, or they look down on people, and I'm sure you have seen and met people like that. Well, I am great, you all suck. That's a dismissive person. That's a scornful person. So they treat persons as unworthy. Who are you? I'm the only one who knows everything around here. You don't know anything. They also have a low regard for others, and they don't tend to have very good relationships. Well, it's kind of hard to have good relations with people if you think you're better than everybody else and everybody else sucks. I mean, how do people want to gravitate to someone who thinks that they are great? I suck. Alright, so generally speaking, not that the person may not have relationships with some people, but generally speaking, when we actually evaluate their overall interrelationships, it's a bit poor. So that's a dismissive person, number 3. Number 4, the word is fearful. This person has a negative view of themselves and a negative view of others. Fearful. This person is apprehensive about relationships. Normally speaking, this person may have had very negative relations in their younger ages. They may have been a victim of very traumatic circumstances. And so this person has learned not to trust people. They probably put their trust in people that they were close to, and these people hurt them or harm them in any particular way. And so this person no longer has a good trust of individuals at all. And so they'll see themselves as not worthy, as not capable. They see themselves as not a good person. They also fear that people don't love them and that they are not lovable. And also they tend to avoid close relationships completely, and they tend to feel very insecure. And sometimes you see some people like that. Otherwise, very nice people. I can think of an individual right now that I know. Very nice person, but shrinks away from relationships. Some sort of traumatic event may have happened in their earlier lives, and so this individual shrinks away from relationships. They live a very enclosed life. This person has remained by themselves for a long time, and this person now finds it hard to relate to people, doesn't trust people, has a negative view of themselves. Now you'll say, but it's not always easy to spot. No, it's not always easy to spot. You actually have to be trained or be very aware to know that sometimes people have very negative views of themselves, because they're not that easy to spot at all. No, they aren't. And so sometimes you see somebody looking otherwise very pretty, have a lot of makeup, or very handsome, but this person is struggling with views of themselves, but they learn to masquerade very well. And we'll talk about that later on. That a lot of times when we talk about self-disclosure, a lot of times people have learned to mask because society sometimes demands that you mask, or sometimes in the presence of other people, you just don't want them to get too close, so you have to mask pain. And so a lot of times people may not always be able to allow people to get into the deeper aspects of themselves. And a lot of times, sometimes with talking, counseling, therapy, someone has to learn to treat and deal with painful situations of the past to be able to cope better in life. But you know how it is in the Caribbean. People are very averse to therapy and counseling. And so a lot of times people struggle with internal pain. We go about life not dealing with issues. And so because we have not dealt with issues, a lot of times they come out in other areas of our lives. A lot of times you go to workplaces and people are willing to oppress people and be mean and insultive or treat you terrible. All of that are ways in which these things manifest themselves because persons haven't been able to deal with issues. You don't know how to cope with them. Nobody taught us how to cope with them. So how do we know? But what we do know is that it comes out in human relations, how we interrelate with other persons. And so John Bowlby, actually studied how people relate to others and realized how somebody views themselves and how they view others actually plays an important role in human relations, and that is very, very true. You will find that knowing and taking care of the real you might be quite possible without threatening others, and this is where we want self-concept to be stable, and we want people to be able to have a good positive view of themselves, and of course investigating that is important. We want healthy children coming up into healthy adults. Persons who are stable and comfortable, we want them coming into great healthy adults because we want them to get it from childhood. Moving along to self-concept. How you believe or value yourself. So there's a slight variant here between self-concept and self-esteem. Self-concept is how you view yourself, but self-esteem is how you value yourself, the kind of importance you put on yourself, and that's very important. In your text, it defines self-esteem, and so you are going to be able to fill out those words. Those are very clear-cut and very specific from your text in the section that deals with self-esteem. Note on this slide as well that we say self-esteem is how a person is able to see themselves, and self-esteem has to do with the feelings you have about yourself in terms of your worth. Do you see yourself as worthy as an individual to be able to be here, to experience life, worthy of affection, love, and having your own place in this world? Where does it come from? You can write some of these in. Self-esteem tends to be built in children coming up. So friends, going to school, parents, / family, and we put their grandparents or anyone else who was important in your family. Teachers, those who would have been able to tell us things. Important others, so true. And all of these persons can impact the way we see ourselves and the way we esteem our worth. I met somebody recently and she said to me, she had a teacher in elementary school who said to her, "You will never be good at maths. You will never be able to do maths well. You are not capable," because she struggled with math in elementary school for a period of time. And that affected her mind. They actually thought for a period of time that she couldn't do it. And she went to do math 1 time, and she went to do math 2 times, and she went to do math 3 times before she passed CXC math. And that was very important to note, because here again is a very, very interesting experience about a teacher telling a child, you are not capable, you are not worthy, and these significant persons in our life are there. And these significant persons are there to let us know, yea or nay, how worthy are you, how capable are you, and they can affect the way we actually go about viewing life and viewing ourselves as capable. Your book actually identifies 2 parts of self-esteem, all right, or 2 elements of self-esteem, and I want you to note those 2 very importantly. The second one here uses a word called, a combined word or combined term called self-efficacy. That's a person's ability to believe that they could deal with problems when they happen. But I think myself as capable. I can handle challenges. Can I handle challenges? Self-efficacy. That's a lovely word. I can see that making the quiz coming up very soon. So self-confidence. Now self-confidence is not how only I feel with people I am very familiar with. my family and my friends, not just there alone, but also in non-familiar settings, all right? And handling the unknown. How capable do you feel? How confident do you feel? And that's important. Self-efficacy and building that as we go through life, very important. Self-esteem normally is on a scale. We normally say somebody has low self-esteem or high self-esteem, or they're somewhere in the middle. Many of us tend to grow over time, moderate to high as time goes by. Some of us have struggled with low self-esteem because of different experiences we may have had in our lives. Again, all of this impacts the way we treat other people and how other people treat us. Human relations also talks about, again, a combination of the way you view yourself, self-concept, the way you accept or reject yourself, and the way you assume other people think about you. So think about that very carefully. This is how self-concept and self-esteem go together. All right, how you view yourself, all right, how people view you, and how you accept or reject yourself as worthy. So we're seeing here a specific link between self-concept and self-esteem. The book goes on to talk about the fact that a person with low self-esteem experiences a number of emotions, and you'll see some of them there. I want you to note the last word in the first paragraph here, insomnia, the inability to sleep. Do you believe that someone who has a low view of themselves can actually experience these things? The answer is yes, that is so true. And so many times, ladies and gentlemen, we will find that sometimes somebody is going through something and you can't put your hand on it. Some people will tell you, I'm getting a headache for the longest while and I cannot tell you why I'm getting a headache. Why am I getting a headache? Sometimes it has something to do with what's going on in our own heads, in our own minds. And sometimes you may go to the doctor. The doctor says, I can't find anything wrong with you. We have done tests and we're testing physically to see. We're checking this and we're checking that. Nothing seems to be wrong. And a lot of times probably something is not wrong. Sometimes it has to do with what's going on mentally. Because the mind affects the body. And this is what we're saying here. A lot of times when you are feeling anxious and irritable, people may not necessarily see or know. They may not be able to know. Sometimes we are very good at suppressing. But one of the things and the reasons why they say one shouldn't suppress how one thinks or feels is because the body does not lie. And I love to say that in my human relations, my human resource 400 class, which is motivational work behavior. The body cannot lie. If you are feeling uncomfortable, even though others are wrong, you don't know. Your body is going to act out some way or the other. You break out. You're getting back pain. You're getting a headache. You don't know why you're feeling like this because the mind, something is going on up there that is making the body feel uneasy. It's making the mind uneasy. Therefore, it's making the body feel uneasy. And that is important to know. That is why it's important to treat the issues. Talk to someone about something that's going on. Take it out. Find someone you trust and be able to get it out there. Release. Because if the body doesn't find a way to release, if the mind doesn't find a way to release, a lot of times it's going to act out in very various ways. The body cannot lie. We can suppress feelings. However, it's going to manifest itself some way or the other. And so it's important for us to treat it very healthy. And so this slide is making that point. Also, at the very bottom, we talk about the fact that a person with low self-esteem can also show little enthusiasm. So the person that's not interested. I don't care. I don't care about it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I don't want. A lot of times, a lot of people don't care. But something else is going on. And sometimes, again, if we have the time to treat with it, we may be able to treat the certain issues as time goes by. Sometimes I see it in the classroom. Sometimes people say, I don't care about anything. The truth is, that's not true. So sometimes a little talk with an individual shows up some issues that need to be addressed to get the person feeling capable once again, and so think about how they view themselves with an aspect to improve that. Self-esteem continuing, persons with healthy self-esteem, and this is what we want people to be. We want people to have healthy self-esteem so that they are able to feel good about life and feel good about facing issues and take on challenges and feel valuable and be satisfied and act in positive ways and be open and ready to experiences. That's somebody who has a great self-esteem, and we want more people like that around because they tend to make balanced individuals and actually contribute very much to being able to feel capable. On this slide, I want to give you some information for you to note, so please make a note of the following. How can someone's self-esteem be lowered? How can somebody feel worse about themselves? Well, sometimes, number one, failure and frustration. Sometimes, a lot of time, you experience a number of setbacks in life. And a number of things you have tried didn't work out. Somebody could actually feel like, wow, not working out for me. This could happen among a number of things. It could be happening, someone might feel a feeling at relationships. They may not be getting a job. An individual may feel like they're trying certain entrepreneurial pursuits and it's not working out as they thought. All right? Sometimes things are just not going the way you are. Probably have friendships and they are breaking down. Failure and frustration can lead to having people having lowered self-esteem. Notice I didn't say low necessarily. I said lowered. Lowered means you may be having a good self-esteem and then sometimes it may slide. It doesn't mean it goes from extremes high to low. It may mean it may just go down a bit in terms of how you view yourself as capable and worthy. Number 2, personal defects. Sometimes life, or God forbid, something happens. You have a disability, a physical disability, and sometimes you may find as well, you may find that an individual may have physical effects or other type of effects or learning disabilities, and this individual may find themselves feeling lowered self-esteem or experiencing that. Number 3, constant comparison and competition. You may constantly be compared to other persons. Why can't you be like that person? Why can't you be like that? I'm like, well, I'm not that person. And so you may be constantly compared to other persons. You should be like that person, or you should be like that person. You may be told by a significant other or a family member or persons important to you, why can't you be like this person? Why can't you look this way? Why can't you speak that way? Why can't you act that way? And so constant comparison with other people makes us feel like unworthy. And so sometimes, especially when the person is in some better position off than we are in a particular dimension of life, and that constant comparison or having to compete with other people who are better than us sometimes can put us in a position of having lowered self-esteem. Number 4, measuring versus understanding. So somebody just looks at you, instead of trying to understand you, they constantly measure you against some kind of ideal, and they don't seek to understand who you are. That's number 4, measuring versus understanding. Number 5, anybody who's forced to learn or perform at a particular rate or speed that they're not comfortable with, they can also be experience lowered self-esteem. Number 6, lack of human interaction, not enough human interaction with human beings. Sometimes, again, people may be fearful, like John Bowlby talk about, or anxious. They may have negative view of themselves, so they shrink back from others. When human interaction is going to help us to socialize and be able to form good social relationships and social cues, we will find sometimes people who don't interact a lot with other people tend to have lowered self-esteem a lot of times, because they're not interfacing with persons enough to be able to learn and to grow and to develop. All right, and the last one we have here is negative human interactions. Dealing or being around persons who insult and condescend you in their speech and make you feel that you're less than. If you're constantly told that you're stupid and you're dumb, you don't know nothing, you don't do anything right, and you're constantly told you're dumb, you're foolish, you're dotish, you will find a lot of the times, over time, this person can develop a lot of lowered self-esteem. And I want to put a plug here, because a lot of times in the Caribbean, I found that sometimes we are very damaging in our speech. And a lot of times growing up, we would have heard, you're dotish, you're dumb, you're stupid, or what? What's wrong with you? You're bebe. I know sometimes in Barbados, I think you all use the word, you get cussed out, or they cuss you out. And, and a lot of times children growing up, they are told very disparaging remarks. And we have to be careful of that. We don't want to constantly tell somebody you are this or that. You may act like this, or you may do these types of behaviors. And yes, you may have to address and discipline and punish behaviors. But the constant telling an individual that you're stupid and you're dumb, how does somebody begin to think, well, I'm not stupid and dumb if you keep telling me I'm stupid and dumb? Especially if I'm told by people who I respect, people who I value, people who are important to me, keep telling me you're dumb and you're stupid and you're dotish. And we need to be very careful in the way we speak to children. And that's why sometimes I find, especially in Trinidad, I find sometimes that you talk sometimes to little children or young children and you ask them to speak, to have a conversation, and many times they can't. How are you? Fine. Everything all right? Yes. And a lot of times they can't express themselves well because a lot of times they're not taught to express themselves. Speak. Use language, use words, and sometimes, a lot of times, you ask a child to go up and do something, or to take in front, go on a stage and perform, and some children are very scared. Sometimes they are told that they're dumb and stupid and dotish, and if you are constantly told that, how do you feel great to go up now and say, oh yes, great, I'm a good person, take your hand out your mouth, stop doing that, I'll hit you, stop it. And Caribbean people know all of this all too well. So I'm just saying, be careful. If you want your child, or you want to see children, nieces and nephews and cousins develop in such a way that they become capable of themselves, speak to them in language that is important. Use words that build them up. Again, that is not a case for saying you don't discipline a child when they are wrong. and you don't punish a child if they do wrong. Or sometimes you have to deal with matters. No, that's not the same thing. You have to deal with matters. You have to deal with them straight. But look at the words that you tell individuals over time, because a lot of the time it helps them develop how they see themselves, the kind of behaviors and choices they make in the future, and how they relate to other people. Just thought I should put a little plug in there for the way we speak to one another. One more thing I will see on this. I was teaching a class at another institution some years ago, and I told a class one time, it was a human resource management class, and I told a class, I said, we were talking about words and language, and I said to them, I'm not too sure I enjoy having anybody tell me that I'm stupid, in joke or in serious. You know, sometimes in joke we tell people, oh, you're a stupid. We tell them that in joke. And sometimes, you know, people, we say words, you know, we say we're just joking, it's just words, right? We just say words, it doesn't mean anything. So we say until we realize how these things impact sometimes the choices and how we feel about ourselves, especially in unfamiliar settings or in settings where we don't know people very well. We actually assume people are going to think the same things about us. And I told the class that I said, listen, I don't agree that anybody should call me stupid in jest or in serious. And everybody got quiet. I said, I shouldn't be in a relationship with any individual, with any male, and he calls me stupid in joke or in serious. The whole class got quiet. Like, well, miss, that's just normal. And that's what I'm saying. Some things are normal. But sometimes these things that we accept as normal are sometimes the very things that actually contribute to us having lowered self-esteem, or in some cases, don't feel ourselves capable or worthy to handle certain circumstances in life. So watch your words. Watch what you say to yourself, and watch what you say to others. Build them up as much as possible, even if you have to correct or you have to chasten. The origins of self-esteem. And your book talks about this, so I'll just touch on it quickly, but you can read this for yourself on the conditional positive regard versus conditional positive regard. And your book talks about this very carefully. You can read it. Again, making sure that children over time, especially parents and children, keep helping your child feel that they are worthy. Again, it doesn't mean that if they do wrong that you don't have to correct it or punish it or deal with it very strongly. But watch the words that we use. And at the end of the day, the child must still feel worthy. I made a mistake. I messed up. I was punished for what I did wrong. I was corrected or I was disciplined for what I did wrong. However, at the end of the day, I still think I'm an individual who is worthy of life, worthy of living, worthy to be corrected, but also worthy of actually improving, making mistakes, falling down, and getting up and going again. All right, positive regard, unconditional. As opposed to those who receive conditional positive regard, who are only meant to feel good when they do something good, and when they don't do something good, they say, well, I don't want you to be my child anymore. Leave my house. Okay, come on. Now, at the same time, if a behavior has to be addressed, that's important. But again, at the end of the day, even if I make mistakes and I fall down, I must be corrected, but I must get up and move again, which is the whole point of positive regard, all right, unconditionally, as the case may be. So I have a question here for you. After we have gone through this and you have reviewed your text, how are self-concept and self-esteem connected? Now I want you to answer this question. That's very notable. This could make a great quiz question right here. After you have perused your chapter, I need you to write a number of lines here to tell me how you see the both of them connected. Where do they begin? Where do they cross? Where are they different? And where are they the same? You will answer that question for me as well. Make sure you use the parts of self-concept as well in your answer to answer this important question. So your book talks about these. Dealing with persons with low self-esteem, you may identify it. Sometimes you're able to spot it. All right, treat people with, give them time. All right, if you have time to be able to help that individual, treat them with respect. Allow them to feel confident in themselves over time. You know, positive regard them. Let them know if they're going wrong, but tell them when they're doing great as well. That's very important. Balance it out. Make sure they know well that they are doing okay. Make a big deal. Celebrate their growths. Celebrate their achievements. Very important as well. But remember, this takes time. It does not change easily. All right, so it only comes at times of encouragement and support. Step towards achieving self-esteem. This is in your text. I want you to pay a very close attention to number 2 and number 9. Number 2 means to develop an internal locus of control. I expect you to read your text to find out what is an internal locus of control. And also number 9 says avoid surface analysis of yourself and others. Please make a note of that in your book. Make sure you highlight number 2 and number 9 very importantly. And so again, Summarizing everything, self-concept defined. The four parts of self-concept that's in your text, you fill that in on your slides. Psychologist Carl Rogers had to see a number of things. We have talked about self-esteem and the aspects of self-esteem, positive regard, the way we regard young people, particularly as it relates to the book children, and it also relates to adults as well, but typically these things are formed in childhood. Strategies for success personally and with others. All right, so very important indeed. Take some time to review all of these concepts. Again, your quiz will be coming up very soon. I made some notes on that so that you can be able to do that. Self-concept and self-esteem.